the room out in the hallway. Make sure you ping your friends into the room just in case, like me, they were having trouble finding the room in the hallway. So your friends can join the discussion too. You can raise your hand to chime in or join us in the chat if you're joining us on our video stream. You can watch us on video stream, follow along with our headlines, or register for free by visiting our website. That's musicindustrycity.com. We're going to be starting our countdown here shortly and looking at today's music news headlines. Thanks for joining us for today's music news at noon, live from New York.
Yes, and we are back, everybody. It's great to be back here. I know we had some time off, a few days. We were out in Barcelona, some little business, some little pleasure, a little mix of everything. So we are going to get started just right after the countdown as we go into it right now. From New York, it's the Music News at Noon on the Music Industry City Broadcast Network. I'm Peter Schwing, and please join me in welcoming my co-hosts Eli Window and our UK correspondent, Angela Randall.
Hello, Peter, and welcome back. It's great to see you and everybody.
Hello to the sunny shores of the United Kingdom.
Right on. And today's news, Sony sues, but also Sony pays. Damon Dash's Roc-A-Fella NFT auction is up again. England's controversial vaccine passports, COVID infections at the concerts, Twitch and DMCA. We're back. You know I'm going to be talking about this one. And as always, our daily Spotify update. Those stories are coming up. But first, let's take a look at this day in music history with Eli Window. Eli.
All right, let's look at this day in music history. Today is July 21st. On July 21st, 2004, composer Jerry Goldsmith passed away after a long battle with cancer at the age of 75. He created the music scores of classic movies and television shows Star Trek, Planet of the Apes, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and Dr. Kildare, in memory. On this day, 2005, we lost UK singer Long John Baldry, who died of chest infection. He was one of the founding fathers of British rock and roll in the 1960s, performing with Blues Incorporated and Cyril Davies R&B All-Stars, in memory. Birthdays today, born July 21st, 1931, American soul jazz and hard bop tenor saxophonist Blas Johnson. He is best known as the tenor saxophone soloist on Henry Mancini's famous The Pink Panther theme. Also born on this date in 1946, Barry Whitlam, drummer with English beat rock band Herman's Hermits. Born this date, 1948, singer-songwriter Cat Stevens. Also born on this date in 1961, Jim Martin, guitarist from American rock band Faith No More. And born this date, 1981, British singer-songwriter and actress Paloma Faith. Happy birthday. Moving on to this day in music history. On this date, 1987, Guns N' Roses released their debut album on Geffen Records. Appetite for Destruction featured the singles Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, and Paradise City. The album now has worldwide sales in excess of 28 million. 18 million of these are in the US, making it the best-selling debut album of all time in the US. What a day. On this date, 1994, Oasis played their first ever American show as part of the New Music Seminar at Wetlands in New York City. And on this date, 2003, Coldplay singer Chris Martin was charged with malicious damage in Australia. Martin allegedly attacked a photographer's car after the photographer took pictures of him surfing at 7 Mile Beach. Martin admitted he had lost his temper due to the constant harassment by that journalist and consequently smashed his windscreen and let the air out of his tires. And on this date, 2017, Justin Bieber was banned from performing in China, according to Beijing's Culture Bureau. In a statement, the ministry said it was not appropriate to allow entertainers who have engaged in quote unquote bad behavior. The pop star, who was allowed to tour China in 2013, joined a long list of musicians who have found themselves similarly blacklisted. Tough day in music history for Justin Bieber. That's it for On This Day in Music History, and back over to my co-host Peter Twain.
Well, I wasn't involved at the time. I got to give a shout out. New Music Seminar, Oasis' first U.S. gig was there in '94. So fantastic. All right, and let's get moving on with this. To set the stage for a roundtable conversation, we bring you summaries and commentary on the latest headlines. If you'd like to offer your thoughts on one of today's topics, request to join the stage during the roundtable segment. I'd also like to thank everyone who is viewing a show on our video live stream and joining in the members-only newsroom live discussion thread on musicindustrycity.com. Yes, there is a live discussion, and you can find out all this in our show notes. You can go to musicindustrycity.com. You can click on the news. If you're registered at New Music I said New Music Seminar. It's just part of my blood. Musicindustrycity.com. You can register for free, and it gives you access to things like the community chats and everything, and a lot more exclusive content. So with that being said, let's get to it. Right, and this is first piece is from musicbusinessworldwide.com. To access all the articles mentioned in today's show and throughout the week, visit musicindustrycity.com and click on the show notes graphic. And if you are logged in, you can also just click on the graphic. It says Music News at Noon, and we have all the links in that article and all the links to the headlines in that post there. And you can see the video live stream. And you can also join the chat if you are registered at musicindustrycity.com. So, Sony Music. We're going to talk a little about Sony here for the first two segments. Sony Music sues $1 billion valued fitness brand Gymshark for infringing 297 recordings and ads. Sony Music says that Gymshark, quote, has achieved a success by infringing sound recordings and musical compositions belonging to a number of different content owners, including Sony's, on a large scale in a legal complaint filed in California on July 15th. According to the statement, Gymshark has, quote, largely eschewed traditional advertising in favor of promoting its products through video broadcasts on platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. According to the lawsuit, these videos, quote, feature popular sound recordings as an integral part of the presentation, according to Sony Music. While these videos on Instagram, TikTok, and other platforms have been instrumental to Gymshark's success, the company has not paid for the privilege to use sound recordings that are featured in them. Sony Music Entertainment goes on to say Gymshark has misappropriated hundreds of the most popular and valuable sound recordings in the market. It's also says that Gymshark's investment in social media and the Gymshark's videos in particular have been critical to Gymshark's success. And that's important is in this note here is that they're saying that it's been critical to their success. While all three major labels have licensed music to Facebook owns Instagram for personal use, the lawsuit points out that Instagram's terms of use include music guidelines, which state, quote, use of music for commercial and non-personal purposes in particular is prohibited unless you have obtained appropriate licenses. Sony Music is requesting a trial by jury and seeking statutory damages of up to $150,000 per infringing recording, and which there are a total of 297, which means that at $150,000 each, that could be up to over $44 million. All right. So this is, it goes along the thing that they're talking about with these ads and everything is, the article goes in much more detail about some of the specific ads. And they said that they've requested to use and they didn't get a license and permission to use a song, and they went ahead and used it anyway. And they're saying that the success is built upon the use. All right.
Yeah, Ben and Lou are pretty famous over here as having been a success story, quote unquote, like you mentioned, Peter, success story for having started Gymshark in their university apartment while they were both attending Aston University. And yeah, knowing that they've sort of not done their due diligence in this department is making me sort of wonder if I should let my husband wear their stuff to the gym until
I think you just got cut off at the end there, but we're just stuff to the gym. Yeah, like, let's kind of little protest there, stage a protest. I mean, everybody else there's plenty of protests going on. You can protest Spotify, and you can start a website to protest Spotify too, as some have already done that. Well, we're going to stick with Sony for one more, but this is the other side of Sony about paying out. And this is Sony confirms it will pay out royalties on unrecouped publishing deals as well. And this is from Complete Music Update. This one, Sony said last month that it will implement such strategy on the recording side of the business. It means that musicians who signed deals with the Sony label in the 20th century would now collect royalties whenever their music is streamed, even if they never completely repaid any advances or other recoupable costs made by the company prior to 2000. The fact that many artists are still paying off recoupable advances decades after a record has been released was raised during a recent parliamentary inquiry into the economics of streaming, because it means that a heritage artist whose catalog has been revitalized by streaming may not be receiving any new payment because the royalties they are owed are being used to pay off old debts. Publishing deals, to note, are often more lucrative to songwriters than record deals are to musicians, with the writer receiving the majority of any cash earned by their songs, making it easier to repay their advances. The percentage of money allocated to songwriters on average deals has increased over time, while life of copyright deals, in which a publisher holds ownership of a writer's works for as long as the copyright in them lives, have all but vanished, at least in Anglo-American markets. This means that a publisher will only have authority over a writer's music for a limited time. However, for writers who signed life of copyright deals in the 20th century that paid lower songwriting royalties, Sony's current move could result in new money flowing each year. The new regulation will also be implemented retroactively to the beginning of 2021. Sony Music Publishing CEO John Platt announced the new policy to songwriters in a memo, saying, quote, "Today, I am pleased to share that we are launching Songwriters Forward, an initiative designed to expand our support of careers at every stage. Under Songwriters Forum, we are introducing the Legacy Unrecouped Balance Program to qualifying Sony Music Publishing songwriters. We have been working for some time to develop this plan, which complements Sony Music's recently announced Artist Forward. We will no longer apply existing unrecouped balances to earnings for eligible songwriters signed prior to the year 2000 who have not received advances since, and this applies retroactively to January 1st, 2021. I just see Sony's been on a roll lately. A lot major labels always, it's easy to beat up on the major labels, and there's for good reason. But I gotta say, Sony's been doing a lot of great things for over the past year. Making smart acquisitions, but this whole clearing up unrecouped balances and now pushing it over to the publishing side. This is something that really helps cash flow. It helps the artist. It helps the songwriter. It helps the creatives. So good on Sony for this one. All right, moving over to, let's talk about the three letters, the NFT, because Damon Dash is back. And we talked about it a couple weeks ago. He was trying to, people were saying he was selling part of an album, but Jay-Z said no, went to courts, so it was a mess and nobody knew what was going on. Well, he's back, and it says, this article from Complete Music Update, we're going to stay with CompleteMusicUpdate.com for a moment. Damon Dash launches Roc-A-Fella NFT auction again. All right, this one, despite the current legal struggle over Damon Dash's authority to sell his part in Roc-A-Fella Records through an NFT auction, Damon Dash has opened an NFT auction through which he will sell his stake in Roc-A-Fella Records. Now, this is what he originally was talking about, but he was selling it as an NFT, as the album, and people were confused, saying you can't sell part of the album, but we'll get into a little more detail here of what is the actual asset of Roc-A-Fella Records. So the other day, Dash created his own NFT gallery via which he will sell his ownership in Roc-A-Fella, with bidding due to begin on Friday. Dash's attempts to sell his Roc-A-Fella share have already been thwarted by one of the label's co-founders and stockholders, Jay-Z. Dash was charged in court with illegally attempting to sell the recording rights to Jay-Z's debut album, Reasonable Doubt. Dash claims to be, quote, fighting for the independence of artists and fighting for good taste, in a statement on his new gallery website. He goes on to say, quote, they knew that I wasn't trying to sell the whole company, so why say it? It was a very intentional thing for them to do so that people would think that they cannot buy anything I was selling, even that which is mine to sell. Their efforts were all to muddy the waters, to discount, discredit, and devalue a property that I own. Dash also spoke to Variety about the confusion over whether he was selling the rights in reasonable doubt in their entirety or just his stake in the Roc-A-Fella company. Even if he is selling a stake in Roc-A-Fella rather than the rights to reasonable doubt, the Jay-Z album is essentially the label's only asset, so they are in some senses the same thing, even if Dash is explicit that just a third of the business is for sale. Dash previously used a third-party site to host his auction, which then halted the sale in response to the challenge from Jay-Z, and his decision to build his own NFT auction site may be an attempt by Dash to force through the sale this time by ignoring any future demands. However, it appears unlikely that Jay-Z will make any additional legal moves to halt this newest sale. And I still got a question. Why are you selling a company through an NFT? Why, there's been many ways to sell a company, and we've done it for years. Why does it have to be an NFT? Does he think he's going to get more? Is it the auction? I mean, it perplexes me a little bit to, I love NFTs, but it perplexes me to some of the use cases that are being put out there.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of situations where someone has actually sold not just a physical asset, but a physical asset that has assets, like like a company or a portion of a company. Just yet, it feels a bit meta to me, or maybe like Inception. I'm not quite sure, but either way, I'd love to see how this all sort of plays out because I think it's really just a publicity stunt.
Yeah, I think that he's trying to jump on the hype wagon of NFTs, but that bubble has also burst, and he might be better off going through like private channels to find a potential buyer. Now, the other thing is when you own an NFT, I mean, if it's in the market, so if you're in the market, and this is these things that would like, if I bought this NFT in a marketplace and I have this, now I own the rights to Roc-A-Fella. Fantastic. Wonderful. What does that get me? What kind of contract do I have with the company? Also, what happens if that marketplace in 10 years closes down? It goes offline. Like, do I still own the NFT if I can't access it in the marketplace, or can I transfer my wallet to a different, how is this all stored? If it all like implodes, do I still own it? And that's some of the things about having the rug pulled out from under them in the NFT market. So is it you own the NFT and then you sign some other paperwork? I mean, there's a lot to discuss, and also the legal issues. And lawyers are just gonna, lawyers are like, bring me more clients, please. And that's going to tie us into.
Surely.
Go on.
Sorry, Peter. I've got a delay going for some reason whenever whenever I go to hit mute. So if it's troubling, just let me know. I was just going to say, surely the issue is also that if you're paying in cryptocurrency, which most NFTs are bought and sold in, could it potentially mean that the value of the portion of the company that you purchased is worth more since the currency is different eventually than the remainder of the company when it goes to be sold, because potentially you'd be holding your portion of it in cryptocurrency? I mean, that's just an odd one to even.
I don't think it would change the value of the company itself on the books. It's two separate entities, and that's again why this is confusing. Are you just saying that it's an NFT and then you still have to go fill out other actual paperwork? Can you transfer a company? I know somebody was selling an apartment via an NFT, and these are really interesting cases. But what again, it's what is the property? What are people? This is all stuff that has to be figured out that we don't know. I don't know, and a lot of people claim they know, but they don't know either. But I'm going to tie this in with, as we're talking about it, this other article from Bloomberg Law. And this one titled, What Copyright Lawyers Need to Know About NFTs. And this article, again, you can find all the articles at musicindustrycity.com. You can click on the show notes graphic or click on the icon that just has today's date. It says music notes, and you can join in the actual live conversation in the chat there. So this one has a lot. I'm going to just pick, kind of focus on one area of this. So if you're interested, dig into this article and Bloomberg Law. And The question really comes down to first is, can NFTs lawfully effectuate a digital first sale? This leads to one open question about the implications of copyright law for art based NFTs. Does the first sale doctrine apply to NFTs? So, in the context of traditional physical artwork, the first sale doctrine allows buyers of a specific piece or copy of an artwork to resell that same art piece or copy without violating the copyright holder's exclusive right of distribution, and to do so without seeking permission from the copyright holder. The sale of a digital copy of work, on the other hand, will almost always involve the reproduction of that work, and courts have refused to consider such action to be within the scope of the first sale doctrine. Going back in Capitol Records versus Redigi circa 2018, for example, the Second Court refused to apply the first sale concept to the resale of an MP3 file, since the resale would necessitate an unauthorized reproduction of the original MP3 file. In fact, the MP3 that was resold was not the original MP3, even though the original had been destroyed after copying it. This was a new copy. The court did admit, however, that, quote, other technology may exist or be developed that could lawfully effectuate a digital first sale. So the first sale copies and doctrine NFTs could provide such a technology, potentially. NFTs are by definition one of a kind and non-fungible. So one buys an NFT, they do not buy the file holding the digital artwork associated with the NFT, but rather the token itself. In theory, the NFT owner can resell what was originally sold, which is the NFT, without making unauthorized duplicates. This analysis is not clear-cut, though. For one, the first sale doctrine applies to copies, which the Copyright Act defines as, quote, material objects in which a work is fixed by any method now known or later developed. NFTs are intangible and thus may not be deemed by the courts to be material objects. Despite the doctrine's ambiguity, many NFT sale contracts seek to sidestep the first sale issue by specifically stating that NFT buyers have the right to resell the NFT. On one hand, in accordance with the first sale theory, the transfer of the NFT connected with the work or art or other copyright protected work would not include the reproduction or distribution of a protected work. However, if the new owner of the NFT accesses the underlying work, and this access involves the creation of a new copy of the work or distribution of it, then the transfer of the NFT may potentially fall outside the scope of the first sale doctrine and create potential copyright liability. I promise this is the last this little summary I'm going to give, because this is a lot to dig into. Some sale agreements even go further, stating that the artist will get a certain amount of resale royalties if the NFTs continue to be a fixture in the art market. Courts may be obliged to consider whether to adopt a digital first sale theory that is sensitive to new technological advances, such as the growth of NFTs. Well, if anybody has, do we have any lawyers in the house? Because I would love to hear a little bit more from what your experiences are. If anybody else has any, has worked, sold, bought. I mean, this is going to be something that it's going to have to be taken care of. I mean, this is a lot of confusion on what it is.
I'm on a panel later at a finance conference to talk about NFTs, and so I've been digging into this a lot. And I continue to find it extremely confusing. I just read an article that Matthew Perry, the actor from Friends, just sold an apartment that he, I guess, completely remodeled in Los Angeles for a huge amount of money, but he sold it 3 years after he bought it and barely made anything from it. And, you would think that a famous person like that, if they were to create a piece of art, sell it as an NFT, it would have some value. But his property, which he completely remodeled, in a sense, a work of art by him, it's non-fungible, there's only one of them in the world, barely made any additional money than he paid for the apartment 3 years earlier. That doesn't make any sense if you think that his association to that property has added no value. But if it were an NFT, it probably would.
And I think that's the just psychological understanding of these NFTs that, I mean, why is somebody spending 60 something $1 million from to paying people for the 1 million pixels? I mean, what it's that art. I'm not in the art circle, but it's that art community. It's like just to say ownership of it. There's that psychological, I own this, you don't, and I have expendable cash and you don't, and I can outbid you and I own it and then I can resell it. So that's what drives it.
Right. There's the psychological ownership value, but it isn't an actual store of value when you think about where to put your money. And unless it's a Picasso or something like that, there's no congruency. There's no this NFT concept needs to mature before it's going to make any sense and before it's going to be, a very reliable place to play in.
Yeah, I still, we have a lot to see because, talking about going with the article, first sale doctrine, second, the secondary market, we haven't seen what the secondary market's going to bring. Can somebody resell that Beeple? Can somebody resell those Kings of Leon tickets? Can somebody resell those Dead Mouse? Well, Dead Mouse is already on the secondary market, but are people buying? And that's what's going to be seen is, okay, it reached the secondary market. And then what happened then after another resell? And what's interesting, and just to to kind of close out on this, is it's like a library card because on the blockchain, so it's on a library card. And I think this might tie in, Mike, with what you were saying earlier, is that I can look at the chain of ownership and like I pull out the library card, I'm like, hey, so and so checked out this book. Well, say if I see Andy's out there, say I know, hey, Andy owned this. I want to own this too. I know Andy owned it 3 ownerships ago. I want to own this just because I like the artwork or whatever it is, the NFT. But also Andy owned it, so I'm gonna go buy it and just send a message over to Andy, be like, hey, Andy, by the way, I bought that. I now own that NFT that you owned 2 years ago. So I'd say somebody's in the back channel here. How would it be if he likely hired designers to design the property? And that is a great question over in the back channel. And yeah, it's there's ways to do splits, like similar to like a split letter on the music side, where you can assign, it's a smart contract. So what you can do is say, I'm going to give a percentage to Eli, who designed the graphics. I'm going to give a percentage to Angela because she helped with marketing, and that's in the smart contract, and that is for remuneration all the way on the resell. So if they, you can put a sunset on it if you want, probably, I think. But you can say in the contract, anytime this is resold through the marketplace takes their cut and everybody else takes their cut. So that's how you can assign the percentages in that sense. And so, we're on NFTs. Andy did raise his hand. And Andy, well, now that I just said, I guess I said your name 3 times and you appeared.
You did indeed. You said it 3 times and I appeared. Yeah, I mean, there's some real world things of this, like Damien Hirst has done paintings inside buildings and then has rules over what can happen with those where he's painted them directly on walls. But I think in a lot of cases, it's just a case of throwing it open to the real world, as if Matthew Perry had had his interior done by a designer and then he sold his flat in the real world, if you like, with fiat currency and through the usual means. Would they have any say over that? Would they have any claim on it? And I think that to me seems to be the baseline. But there's an interesting thing that's happening with a friend of mine who's doing some stuff with gold, and there's a really interesting caveat to what they're doing that might start applying in different ways with NFTs, because they're selling gold bricks with serial numbers as NFTs, with the principal concept being that you own that brick with the serial number, whereas usually if you invest in gold, you own a percentage of gold that's stored somewhere. Now, if the people who have that gold stored there go out of business, for example, you are last in the queue to get your percentage of payment out of that. Whereas if you actually own a piece of gold with a serial number on it, you are first in the queue because it's a custody position. So there's some really interesting dynamics going on, which people are kind of seeking out through the legal process to make the sale of an NFT of a physical product attractive because of means that you wouldn't have necessarily thought of when there's situations that happen, which cause you to be like that at the front of the queue or the back of the queue. So very interesting dynamic.
It reminds me of those, I'm sure we'll probably see this in the future, is buy a star. Name a star. And you can get the Supernova Star Kit for $79. And you get only the brightest stars to choose from in the universe, and it packs nothing to leave to be desired. You'll receive a constellation chart and a photo book of where your star is, or you can dedicate a star. And now, so it's like nobody owns that star. You can't own a star, but you can claim a star. Is that what we're looking at?
I think in the context that I was just talking about, it's actually very much of a real thing because it's actually a physical property that you have taken ownership, but other people are having custody of it. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, now that billionaires are going into space, how long before we're buying chunks of air up there that we can own?
Yeah, and just to tie, I'm gonna use this as a segue. Is this kind of like if you bought a lordship from the Principality of Sealand?
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
there's plenty of
$12,
lordships
and you
that
can be a lord of Sealand. So with that being said, now we're going to tie that into the UK. Let's pass this over to Eli. Thank you for that, Andy.
All right, let's pass it over to me. We're going to check in with our friends here. If you know anybody who would like to join our discussion, you can use the plus sign to invite your friends to join our discussion. Or if you have comments, feel free to chat with us in back channel. You can chime in the chat on your video viewing platform, or you can raise your hand to join the discussion right here in the room. We are the Music News at Noon, coming to you from New York City each and every weekday, except for Friday, which of course is a very, very busy day for all of us. We take Fridays off. Make sure that you join us each and every weekday, Monday through Thursday, for the Music News at Noon, where we cover all the news that's fit to listen to and discuss relating to the music industry. We'll see you again for all of our broadcasts. But now let's continue with our headlines. We see that England's venues are open again, but new vaccine passport plans stir discontent. With more on this headline, let's go to our UK correspondent, Angela Randall. Angela?
Thanks, Eli. I'm going to look into that. I'll be Lady Angela soon. Government plans in England to let only fully vaccinated patrons into nightclubs and large music venues have been slammed as a, quote, hammer blow to the country's beleaguered live and nighttime industries, which are attempting to revive. Prime Minister Boris Johnson stated at a news conference on Monday that the new regulations would go into effect by the end of September, by which time everyone in England over the age of 18 would have received both COVID-19 vaccine doses. He explained that the change in government policy was spurred by concerns about the potential of coronavirus transmission in places where people congregate in close quarters, such as clubs and music venues. As a result, dozens of nightclubs around the country opened just after midnight local time on Monday to welcome back their first clients in nearly 17 months. The announcement that those same establishments would soon be obliged to make so-called, quote, COVID passports a requirement for all clients sparked anger from executives in the nightclub industry. In Europe, a recent increase in COVID-19 infections in the Netherlands prompted the government to close the country's nightclubs on the 10th of July, only 2 weeks after they reopened. According to NTIA's study, 80% of nightclubs are opposed to implementing vaccination passports due to concerns about enforcing the certification and a decrease in spontaneous customers. In response to Boris Johnson's 19th of July statement, which caught many in the industry off guard, Michael Kill, CEO of the UK Nighttime Industries Association, described the policy shift as, quote, yet another chaotic U-turn and a, quote, absolute shambles. Live, the UK's live music industry group, said it needs more information about the government's intentions and how they will be implemented in order to assess, quote, the full impact of the live music industry. On Tuesday, the United Kingdom registered 46,558 new cases of COVID-19, with the 7-day case average increasing 40% over the previous week. In the last 7 days, 342 people have died within 28 days of testing positive, a 60% increase from the previous week. Obviously, we'll keep this up to date as best as we can with information as the data comes forward and as the Prime Minister makes further announcements. I can tell you that the news on the ground is very split. People who are considering going to nightclubs and who consider those regular visits for their socialization are outraged because they are doing their part in getting their vaccines, and there are plenty of people who are, for whatever reason, are not able to, and they're concerned that it's going to create a bit of an us and them, as well as a bit of a bottleneck when it comes to checking these things. The spontaneous customers issue that they were talking about, the NTIA mentioned. However, on the other side of the coin, a lot of people are saying, well, the kind of people who wouldn't get vaccinated, I should say, are potentially the kind who can put everybody else at risk in these types of environments. And it's sort of a privilege to be able to go to these things in the current times we're living in. And therefore, they're siding with the prime minister. So, yeah, it's very much a tale of two sides. And like I said, we'll keep you up to date on it as more news becomes.
There's still a pandemic going on, and things are open. You can go out. All right, you finally got that. You finally got your freedom day. And then it's like, that doesn't mean there are no restrictions and lifestyle has to change. I look at this as saying, like, yes, okay, you can go out, but something, if you have, get a card. Get a card, show it, make it. Yeah, so things will be slower getting in the door. We're still in a pandemic. Things are going to be different. I just went through the airport. I went through multiple airports in the last week and from different countries. I can tell you it was slower, but it was still okay. I had to get forms filled out. I had to take a test. I had to go wait on lines. And something, the fact that I was just out and being able to travel, that was just a blessing. But I understand. But the thing is, they're talking about foot traffic. Yeah, there's going to like the spontaneous traffic attendees. Yeah, it might limit that, but that you're open. Like, there's still going to be some regulations in place until this is cleared up and we can be fully open. So, I just look at it from, say, that kind of standpoint. So I understand both sides of the coin there. But, it's good to see you're open, though, over there.
Yeah, and one other thing I just wanted to mention, JBT, who's kind of a cult hero over here. He's a scientist and a health advisor in the UK. He's quite a funny figure, and he keeps mentioning the three C's, which is sort of well known for dealing with overlapping conditions for the novel coronavirus stress that it could put on health systems, health services like ours. The three C's are closed spaces with poor ventilation, crowded places with many people, and close contact settings, such as close range conversations. And they've identified those as obviously nightclubs being the hot spots for the three C's. So I don't imagine that they'll be bringing these passports out for every sort of venue, including the concerts, which are outdoors, or small intimate shows, or theaters where you're able to sort of separate seating based on the venue. So it probably will just be a limited number of sort of venues and events. That being the case, I think it's a small price to pay, as you said, Peter.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to stay over in Europe right now for a few articles to talk about some of the effects of these live festivals and concerts, and with mixed results. So let's head over there to the European Commission to launch study into impact of, I'm going to go there in a second. I want to talk about this. This still ties in, with the reciprocity. So the European Commission to launch study into impact of EU court ruling on reciprocity approach to international royalties. Thierry Breton, the EU's Commissioner for the Internal Market, has announced that the European Commission would conduct a study on the implications of a copyright judgment in the EU courts linked to a music royalties issue in Ireland caused by an anomaly in American copyright law. This all starts with the fact that there is no broad performing right as part of the sound recording copyright under U.S. copyright law. This means that no licenses or royalties are necessary when recorded music is broadcast on AM/FM radio stations or played in public areas such as pubs, clubs, taverns, and cafes. The EU court simply stated that because the relevant European directive in the Irish case did not identify the reciprocity method, EU member states could not use it. The earlier understanding, which was supported by the European Council, was said that because the relevant regulation did not mention reciprocity, EU member states could apply it. The verdict was hailed by the U.S. Collection Society Sound Exchange, which has been active in lobbying for an end to the worldwide reciprocity approach, stating that the countries who use such a system have improperly interpreted the aforementioned Global Copyright Convention. Sound Exchange also wants the UK, which has a reciprocity system for artist royalties, to change its system, which is supported by several British musician organizations. However, there have been many detractors of the EU court's decision within the European music community who say that it will result in revenues unfairly flowing out of the European record industry and into the U.S. with no return royalty flow due to persistent constraints in American copyright law. Critics of last year's decision pointed out that it was based on the relevant European directive being silent on the subject. And finally, the EC's decision to launch a study is a welcome first step. It should be part of an accelerated procedure to fix what the court has flagged as a mistake in the drafting of the original directive. Angela, are you hearing, we talk about the UK, and I know this has been lightly discussed. It's going to start coming back to light more now. Anything that you're hearing over there on this?
There's a lot of conversation going on right now about the streaming rates, and it's sparking these very same discussions about reform across the board. As it mentioned in the article, the UK has its own system and has done for some time. So I'm wondering if, with new negotiations post Brexit, if we'll be siding more on the side of creating a similar one that we've always had, or if we may just be lumped in with whatever the EC comes up with as a result of having reciprocity both between the US and the UK, and the UK and the rest of the European Union. I'm not quite sure yet. I think this is a kind of, I don't want to say it's a small battle, but it's one of many battles that we're fighting at the moment. Top of the list being streaming value and musicians getting paid what they're due. But obviously, royalties come into play when you're talking about that as well. So I'm sure it's second or third.
All right. All right, thanks for that. All right, we're going to stay over in Europe and everything to talk about those festivals now and events that have some results that are mixed on for COVID outbreaks. And again, if you want to follow along with any of the articles, you can go to musicindustrycity.com and click on the show notes graphic. Or if you're logged in, if you're registered for free and you're logged in, you can just click on the newsroom live. You can watch the video live stream right there. And we also have a live chat that happens on the website for our residents. And that is something that we're rolling out a whole bunch of new features. So make sure you sign up at musicindustrycity.com for free. All right, so this one is from IQ Mag. A sponsor refuses to pay Super Spreader Festival. Now, this isn't a music event, but we want to tie this into saying, well, the same thing could happen at a music festival. Magners is being sued for allegedly refusing to pay more than £1.7 million in unpaid sponsorship money after a partner festival was designated as a COVID-19 super spreader event. Magners, which is owned by the Dublin-based C&C Group, alleges that Cheltenham Festival's decision to proceed in 2020 has caused the four-day festival substantial reputational damage and that it should have been canceled. The Cheltenham Festival 2020 was, quote, widely seen as a COVID super spreader event, according to the Telegraph. However, organizers and the Department of Health and Social Care claim the festival was operating within public health guidelines at the time. C&C, on the other hand, alleges in documents filed with the High Court in London that the 2020 Cheltenham Festival should have been cancelled and that it also did not want the name Magners' name associated with the 2021 festival, which was held behind closed doors. The Jockey Club, the racecourse's owner, is now suing C&C for more than £1.7 million in damages, claiming that it violated the terms of the sponsorship agreement, which is still in effect. The Jockey Club appears to be confident in their position that the sponsorship contract agreed with Magners stands and is valid and must be honored. So this is something to pay attention to because this could possibly happen in these other events that also, especially in the UK, with no cancellation insurance, or around the world, cancellation insurance is hard to come along. And you have all these sponsors and you have all these vendors. So it's a challenge. And this, we're going to go over to Amsterdam. So we have from Digital Music News, the Dutch Music Festival results in 1,000 new COVID cases despite vaccine and testing requirements. Following the Roc-A-Fella Festival, which took place earlier this month, some perplexing data has emerged in the Netherlands. According to the officials and local sources, more than 1,000 festival goers contracted COVID-19, despite the fact that the event was deliberately planned to be COVID-free. Roc-A-Fella, which took place around the same time as Day Trip, demanded that all attendees produce documentation of a COVID immunization or a negative test, which sounds like an airtight get-together. Therefore, it's astonishing that so many guests became infected with the virus. This is from Digital Music News. It should be noted that it is unknown whether individuals in attendance caught the virus at Verknipt. Some may have obtained COVID after the festival or from a party or event associated with the festival where admittance criteria is less stringent. There's also the possibility that individuals contracted COVID before attending the festival. And one issue was that ticket holders were only required to present a negative test given during the previous 40 hours. So what does that mean for the resurgence of music festivals and, for that matter, live events? We talk about, other events that were taking place and now backed up. So like the Foo Fighters were at the top of the list following a sold-out Madison Square Garden show with vaccinated-only attendees. The band was forced to cancel a follow-up show in Los Angeles because someone in the Foo Fighters staff acquired COVID. Tomorrowland in Belgium, however, was forced also to cancel its 400,000-person mega event due to COVID-19 fears. Earlier this week, Australia's Big Sound was forced to cancel as well. And it goes on because this Delta variation is beginning to spread across the United States, which the potential to convert a roaring comeback into a retreat. Like previously, Live Nation CEO Michael Rapino hinted at a full-fledged makeover in the United States, but with more incremental returns in Europe and Asia. However, given the state of COVID landscape, especially the unexpected outcomes at Verknipt, that comeback could be delayed by a few months. And that big exit festival, this one from Polestar says scientific study shows no COVID infections at Exit Festival. The results, according to the festival founder, CEO Duan Kovevi, showed that the live event sector has been, quote, treated unfairly in the past and that there are no longer any arguments or justifications that can allow gatherings at sporting events in cafes or shopping malls and not at concerts and festivals. The scientific study undertaken by the Health Center Novi Sad and the organization Project Lab separated a total of 345 guests into two groups, those who had been vaccinated and those who had the negative test when they arrived at the festival. Testing was done 7 days later on July 15th through the 17th, where there were no positive coronavirus infections in either group. Only one visitor tested positive out of nearly 20,000 foreign visitors that visited Exit and, in most cases, required a PCR test to return to their home countries. At Exit Festival 2021, access restrictions were strictly enforced, and over 16,000 visitors with a digital green certificate were checked, with as many as 95% immunized by vaccination. Free testing was organized for all people who did not have a valid digital green card certificate, and over the course of 5 days, over 18,000 people were tested, and only 10% of those were positive and were denied entry into the festival. Medical personnel were also on hand, and visitors from other countries were checked in line with the documentation they used to enter the nation, which was usually a PCR test. The thing about this, you're talking about thousands and thousands of guests, and 345 were, tested, were in the sample group. That's a very small sample size. I mean, Exit was massive. So always just take a look at the sample size. I mean, you can't say there were zero.
Yeah, I also think it's important to mention, though, that Exit is Serbia, which has been, as far as my understanding, is had a quite low rate as it is. So if you're looking at locals, the likelihood of there being a widespread of the Delta variant, it was highly unlikely because they haven't had an outbreak of that variant, to my knowledge. And talking about people traveling, there's such like you've experienced yourself, Peter, in the last week or so. There are so many sort of hoops to jump through as far as PCRs and lateral flow tests and documentation to provide coming off the plane and then landing and then being checked again. The likelihood of it not being caught in all that time, pretty slim. So I think it was a perfect storm, and like you say, small sample size as well.
And it's interesting, guys. What was really interesting to me was to get back into the United States, you had to get a PCR test, and it said within 72 hours of flying. I'm like, 72 hours is a long time, which I understand you need to have time to because people are flying, so there's going to be lines. You have to make appointments. So I understand that, but 72 hours is a long time. Even like the previous article saying they were talking about 40 hours before the event, and they were saying that's a long time. So anything can happen. All right, let's move over to some tech. And my favorite one, and it is Twitch. Let's talk DMCA and Twitch. And hi to everybody on Twitch that's tuning in. How you doing? Love Twitch. They just got to work some things out. This one is the Twitch introduces new DMCA policy, which may make streamers' lives easier. Twitch has finally revised its Digital Millennium Copyright Act guidelines for creators after months of complaints and criticism. The rules on Amazon streaming service are no longer as stringent as they were previously. Twitch's DMCA strikes are now, quote, impermanent and will aim to only terminate accounts of repeat infringers. The mechanism is remarkably similar to one used by YouTube for strikes on videos and will provide some relief to its streamers who have been dealing with copyright difficulties in the recent years. It should be noted, however, that Twitch has made it easier for streams to be reported and sanctioned with DMCA strikes. And the Twitch has updated its DMCA notification guidelines on July 19th. It stated the repeat infringer policy section that an account holder will now be required to pay 3 copyright strike charges in order to be called a repeat infringer. Repeat infringers will face sanctions such as Twitch account holders will have restricted access to the server, users' accounts will be deactivated, or both of the preceding. The copyright strikes are similarly temporary, with Twitch stating that the strikes are associated with an account for enough time for Twitch to determine whether the account holder is engaged in repeated infringement such that termination is necessary. Just enough time, just to note, that's very vague, so nobody knows what they mean by enough time. Twitch will need to receive a complete notification of infringement and no counter notification regarding the alleged infringement or retraction of the notification. And counter notification is reaction from Twitch account holders who believe the complaint is incorrect or misidentified and wish to have the complaint dismissed. If Twitch gets a counter notification or the complaint is withdrawn, the strike will be canceled. And if this is anything like YouTube, Twitch is going to have a lot of automation in either approving or denying your complaint. I had a strike. It wasn't even a copyright strike. It was something else. It was YouTube didn't like one of our videos, some of the content in it, and if you were to actually look at the script of it, there was all these buzzwords that YouTube doesn't like. But we were actually saying that these are bad things, but YouTube didn't like that. So they said we're going to, you can dispute this. And I said, yeah, please let me know what exactly it is. I understand that, some of these words are in your terms and conditions, but we were using this in a different way to say, like, don't, pay attention to something. And I'm not going to say that because we're on YouTube right now. Also, we're live streaming. So I'm not going to use those words. But they, and I even said to them, I was like, listen, I understand that we hit some key things, but we were talking about on this, please help me understand what it is. And so we don't do it again. And they just said your request was denied, and they pulled the video down. So a lot of this, there's human engagement, there's AIs, there's all this stuff. So Twitch is going to be in for a lot. They're going to be another learning curve, and they're going to, I foresee it, the way Twitch has been running, I foresee this being somebody files, a complaint. Somebody then says, no, hey, we're using this music, a counter notification, and it's just going to get lost in the shuffle. And they don't realize like how much work is going to go into all these takedown notices, well, they've already dealt with takedown notices, but the complaints and counter notifications. And with that, let's move over to one other thing with Twitch user develops. Because of all of this, we have somebody went out and decided to say, I'm sick of all this DMCA strikes on Twitch. Let's do something about it. And this one comes from Complete Music Update as well. And Twitch user develops Spotify hack to overcome music licensing problems on live streaming platform. So it goes by Piqueno Zero, a Twitch member, tells Torrent Freak, quote, I've seen a lot of GTA 5 roleplay on Twitch, and they used to play a lot of music that was appropriate for the RP. But when the DMCA strikes landed, they were hit hard. So I was with them in the mind that I began the endeavor. So I chatted to a friend. We came up with the notion of synchronizing music while still paying the artists. So what he does, he gets really technical, talks about Twitch's user Spotify accounts. Like he basically connects your Spotify account to your Twitch account and like, the API and all the technical stuff. So it really gets into that. But basically what it is, there are a few other hacks he also uses, especially if the streamer changes tracks in the middle of a song and he has ideas and identifies. So basically what it does is when the streamer is playing a song, it queues up the Spotify and it plays in Spotify. So kind of like Station Head, where if I put up a playlist of my Spotify songs and I'm the radio DJ, people have to have their account, their Apple or their Spotify account linked to it. So every time I'm playing it, it's activating the music feed from their account. So if there's 10 people tuned in, that's actually 10 streams. It's not just me streaming once and then to 10 listeners, it's me streaming once plus 10 listeners streaming. So, now he's looking at this like if it gets popular, it could be extended to use with more services, maybe look up songs at different music services. And of course, both Spotify and Apple have been working on their own official group listing services, but developing something comparable to addressing licensing difficulties with live streaming is an intriguing notion. And this would be really interesting if like Twitch says, hey, this sounds cool. Let's buy this out and we can implement this. So we actually still don't have to pay for our licensing. And that's it with Twitch. I'm really not, I've already said my piece. I'm sure I'll have something else with Twitch. I love them, but I just want to see this DMCA taken care of. And with that being said,
big green dot, it's the spot.
The big green dot, it does hit the spot. It is time for our Spotify spot in our broadcast where we look at digital music and streaming technology. But before we do that, we want to check in with your weather. Our UK listeners have reported that unfortunately the sun did not come, but they did get a tan from standing in the English rain. Over to you now, Peter, for the Spotify.
Right on. All right. And this is from Digital Music News as we wrap up. Oh, wow, we went almost, we were going the full hour today. It's first day back in a week, so had a lot to cover. All right, Spotify is suspending users caught improperly downloading songs. Spotify refers to the copies as, quote, improperly downloaded tracks. And this is because Spotify Premium customers can save music locally, but only within the Spotify app. Music streaming copies made using the third-party tool may be played in any app, thereby making a one-to-one copy of the streaming song. Users could use the software to stream and save content from Spotify, Amazon, Deezer, Tidal, and SoundCloud, and it collects the audio streams, separates them into tracks, and saves them to the local device as an MP3 file. Users of the program are now alleging that their Spotify accounts have been banned. Spotify sent them an email informing that their accounts have been suspended. And according to that email, it says, quote, Spotify has determined that your account was involved in an improper use of the Spotify service that violates the terms of service, including potentially improper downloads. So that means Spotify can track when and how its users listened to its audio material. According to the third-party developers, the software causes Spotify to play the music faster, allowing the recording process to proceed more quickly. However, this data enables Spotify to identify customers who have a listening time of 50 minutes compressed into 5 minutes. This is a clear indication that these people are streaming music in order to make unauthorized copies. Some customers have reported that contacting Spotify allows them to have their accounts unbanned, and I hope none of our listeners have had their accounts banned. And that is it for the Spotify spot. That's it for our reads. Let's start the wrap up. What's everybody's thoughts today?
Yeah, I wonder if we have any comments in the back channel or any comments, anyone chiming in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand if you have comments for us on today's reads. And don't forget, you can find out more information about these and more headlines by visiting our website. Did anybody have any comments they wanted to share with us as we wrap up today's final moments of the Music News at Noon?
It seems like a lot of folks are, especially in these articles, it's a lot of crackdowns. There's a lot of people catching those doing the wrong thing and finding a way to make them accountable. So good to see that some of this is happening so the artists get what they deserve for their.
Don't steal the rhyme if you can't do the time. And that's the moral of the story on today's Music News Power Hour. We want to thank you so much for joining us right here. This is Music News at Noon coming to you from New York City. We are with the Music Industry City Broadcast Network, and you can visit our website to watch our video live stream, read more about the articles that we are covering each and every day here in this room, or to register for free, where you can join our online chat and find out more information about resources that we have posted on our website. Our website, once again, is musicindustrycity.com. We hope that you'll join us right here Monday through Thursday each weekday for our Music News at Noon, where we cover all the news relating to the music industry that's actually fit to listen to and discuss. My name is Eli Window, and on behalf of our UK correspondent, Angela Randall, I want to say thank you so much for joining us and being part of our broadcast. And I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome back to my co-host, Peter Schwing. It's great to have you back. We missed you. Welcome back to the States, Peter.
It's great to be back, and I've missed you both as well. I've missed doing the news. So, again, thank you, and I missed everybody that tunes in. Thank you so much for joining us each and every day and hanging out with us. Hope you have a great day, and we're going to be back here tomorrow, same time. It's the Music News at noon. That's Eastern time, and make sure you do check out musicindustrycity.com. We put up all the articles that. In the morning, probably around 10 a.m. Eastern is when we make that post, so you can actually check it earlier before you come to the news, so you can see what we're going to talk about. And if you want to join in the conversation, you already know what we're going to be talking about. So with that being said, have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Cheerio. It's wonderful to see you all. I hope you have a great day today.